How do you arrange flowers when you can't get out to the shop to buy fresh flowers? I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. Well, one option is to use silk flowers. The problem I've got is I've deadheaded all my silk flowers when I made this Easter bonnet. So I'm going to cut the flower heads off, add new stems and then arrange them in my narrow-necked vase. For this project you'll need your own silk flowers, preferably if they've got stems on them, and then if they haven't got stems you've got two options. The first is to glue on a stem using a kebab stick. You'll need a hot glue gun for this as well. And the second option is to use some floristry stub wires, and you might decide that you need some flower arranging tape as well. This is buttonhole tape to secure everything in place. My first job is to pull off these silk flowers from my straw hat. I glued them on originally using my hot glue gun, which can be quite brittle, and I'm hoping with this, with a bit of firmness, I can peel everything off. You can see there the glue does ping off. So I'm going to go through and choose the colours that I want. I've got a creamy coloured vase and I think as it's springtime I'm going to choose the paler colours. Having taken the heads off my hat, I then need to decide how I'm going to attach a stem on the bottom. So this particular flower has a tiny hole. You can see I must have pulled the top of the head off the original stem. So it may be that I can just take my kebab stick and push it back up there, and I'll add a dab of glue in to hold it in place. What I'll do is use my hot glue gun for this. I'll take the kebab stick out, take my glue gun, just taking extra care because the glue will be hot and you don't want to burn yourself. I'm putting a dab right on the end, taking my kebab stick and pushing it in, and let that dry. When my glue is dry, I'm going to use my buttonhole tape to cover up the stem just to disguise the wooden kebab stick. That's optional. If you don't have the tape, work with what you've got. To do this, unravel some of the tape. This tape isn't sticky, it's the plasticky tape that fixes on by stretching, and then it sort of snaps back into position. So holding the stem in my hand, I'm going to start with the tape right over the green top of the base of the flower and pinch that in place, and then stretch out the tape and roll the flower stem into the tape. Stretch it out, you see it's going quite transparent there, and wrap it round and work your way down the stem. It doesn't matter if the tape breaks off, just reattach. Now my coverage is a tiny bit patchy, so I'm going to go over again to get more of a solid colour. And there's my finished flower with a nice long straight stem. The other option is to use a floristry wire. This is quite a thick wire, I think it's a 1.0. You want it to be strong enough it's going to hold the weight of your flower without flopping around. And the advantage of putting a wire stem back onto your flowers is that you've got the control and you can move the head of the flower in the direction you want it to go. This is a ranunculus, so again turn it over. It's got the same little hole where I've pulled the flower off the main stem. Take my glue gun, a dab of glue to the end of the stem, Take the floristry wire and insert that in. I'm going to leave that to dry and carry on with the rest. And my last flower, little daisy. And once the glue is dried, I'll take the stems again just to hide up this gluey joining point. Now my glue has dried, I can tape the rest of the stem and that'll help cover up this lump of glue, but also give a consistency of look between the mix of kebab sticks and floristry wires. Take the tape, exactly the same thing as before, pinch it on at the top and stretch it out and twist the flower stem into the tape. There are my finished flowers, each with its own individual stem. So the kebab stick is quite chunky and stiff and will only go in one position. I've got lots of movement on the other stems, so I can arrange those flowers just where I want those to sit. So now I've added stems onto my flowers, I can get arranging. So what I'm going to do first of all is organise my flowers into sizes, going from the smallest down to the largest. When you're arranging flowers in a vase, it's always good to remember that key principle that your largest flower should be in the middle of the vase, and then progressively you get smaller and smaller and smaller as you move to the outside edges of your arrangement. So putting my flowers in order of the size, it just has to be approximate. I reckon it's probably something like that. So my rose is the largest. I think I've got that's another rose there. 2 ranunculus star flowers. I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be. Cosmos perhaps, and then a marguerite daisy at the end. So it's quite obvious that this is the largest flower. This is the smallest, and then you've got the middle-sized flowers in between. So I'm going to start my arrangement by taking the largest flower and just seeing where that sits in the vase. In fact, I can hear the kebab stick hitting the bottom of the vase, and then slowly with my different sized flowers I want to come up in height. So I'm going to be making a column of flowers rather than having them mounded all in one go, as you might do if you were doing a cut and plonk style of flower arranging. So making sure I remember which was my largest flower, which was my smallest, so I can just keep an eye on where things were going. So I'm going to have the first flower here and then coming up a little bit higher. Now that flower isn't going to stay up there on its own. At the moment, I'm just going to grip it. And because I've put the plastic tape on my flowers, although it's not actually sticky, there is a tiny bit of adhesion with the warmth of my hand. And then come up a little bit higher. Twisting my flowers as well, so I'm showing off the best side. Now I'm getting here and the stems aren't quite long enough, so for my next flower I'm going to have to add in a little extra length. And I can make my flower stems longer by adding in another wire, making it cross over. There's probably about a 2 or 3 centimetre overlap there. Push them together, get out my flower tape and tape the join and continue taping down to the end of the wire. So exactly the same technique as before. While I'm here, I think I'm going to add some extra length onto the rest of my flowers as well. Shall I come a bit closer and then you can see what I'm doing close up? So with my stem end here, laying the second wire over the top, just so there's a good overlap, taking my buttonhole tape and stretching it out and rolling my stems into the tape the same way as we did before. So starting off again, my largest flower is sitting quite nicely, just with its neck resting on the top of the vase. Coming up a little bit higher. And because the flowers are on a wire, I can bend them slightly, just to have it going off to one side. Next flower, a little bit higher. Perhaps I'll bend that slightly to the other side. Next, tiny bit higher. Higher again. And my smallest flower disappearing right up to the top. So I've managed to get, with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flowers, quite a long display. Florists and flower arrangers like working in odd numbers, 3, 5s and 7s, but if you haven't got 7 flowers to hand, work with what you've got. I need to fasten those off just to keep them all together. So again, I'm going to use my floristry tape to do this. If you didn't have any tape, you could use an elastic band. Exactly the same technique as before. Stretching out my tape. And then wrapping the flower stems, rolling the flower stems into the tape. So my stem ends here are quite chunky because I've got 6 of them bound up together, and then each one is on an individual stem higher up. When you're happy with your placement of flowers, add them into your vase. You're going to find they're going to wobble around a little bit because the vase mouth, although it's quite small, is much larger than the stems of all your flowers. So you need to pack your vase out with something. You could use anything you like to pack out your vase, perhaps some old newspapers or plastic bags you've been saving for recycling, kitchen towel, your choice. I've actually got some plastic bags that I was going to take and recycle in my local supermarket, and I've not got around to doing that yet, so I think it'll be a really good use of those bags. These are the insides from cereal packets. I think probably I just need those 2 bags tucked down into the neck, but if you want more security, pack the whole of your vase out. I'm quite happy with that, but because there's only 6 flowers in my arrangement, it is looking really, really sparse. Wouldn't it be nice to add some greenery? But if you haven't got access to a garden or you can't get out of the shops, that's going to be a bit impractical. Have you got any dry cleaning hangers in the house? You could use those to make some little leaf shapes. These are my leaf shapes. Some of them I've made using a wire coat hanger and others using really, really thick floristry wires. But appreciate you may well not have access to those kinds of wires. But most of us have got a dry cleaning hanger somewhere in the house. First of all, you'll need to cut off the hook from your coat hanger. I also cut my wire in half here. It just made it more manageable to work with. And then straighten the wire out. The next job is to take some wool. I've got some leftover cream yarn here. tie a knot over the end of your wire, and then by hand you can wrap the wool around the wire. It gives you a lovely textural stalk, and if you really like this look, you could actually add a woolly detail to each of your flowers as well. It is quite time consuming doing this. You really do need to have your windings much tighter than I'm doing now. I'm going back and forth and back and forth, but I have got a trick I can show you. It will speed things up a bit, but you will need a drill. If you want to speed things up a bit and you've got access to an electric drill, well, this is a really fun way of adding your wool onto your wires really quickly. To show you how to do this, I'm using one of my really thick floristry wires. This is a 1.8mm wire, so it's really chunky. First of all, you need to open up the drill bit so you can fit your wire in just down here. And then tighten really securely to hold it in place. Then tie your wool on. And then on a really slow speed, press to start. And you can see here I'm going really slowly and I'm supporting the wire with my finger. If you press down really hard to get the power going and you don't have your finger supporting the wire, you'll find everything just wobbles, it goes all over the place. See there, I'm going slightly faster. Everything becomes slightly unstable. See, one of those occasions where you do need to go slowly and carefully, but this is great fun to do and much quicker than winding by hand. If you wanted to wind by hand, you might find it useful to dab a bit of hot glue on your coat hanger wire so that your wool doesn't slide off. I could be adding in different colours, and if I wanted to make it chunkier, I just need to work over one area before moving on to the next. That's quite a nice little design detail, getting a lozenge-shaped piece of wool, just to add a bit of contrast and visual interest. I'm working my way up, and when I've got pretty good coverage all the way up, I can start to fold the end of the wire over to create my leaf shape. All the time supporting the wire and the wool with your finger. And I'm going to stop about here. Bend the end of the wire over, wrap the wool round and start again, and just to hold that bended wire in place. Up and down a few times, nice and secure. And I'm going to come down to the base and finish off with a knot. So you can see I've got a mini bump there, a bigger bump there, another mini bump, and then my loop at the end, which is going to become my leaf shape. So take your wire out of the drill. You might want to finish off by hand, last few reels, and go around the wire, pull your wool through. I'm going to do that twice. And then when it's nice and secure, cut off your excess wool. And then to shape the leaf, I'm going to try and get more of a crisp end to my folded wire, slightly more pointed, and then stretch out here. I'm almost aiming for a diamond shape. This can be quite tough on your hands when you're trying to shape the wire, and is really tough if you're using one of the dry cleaners coat hangers because they're quite thick. But that gives me a leaf shape that I can then add into my vase. So there's my flowers packed in the neck with the plastic bags just to hold everything in place. And then because these leaves are on wires themselves, I can shape them so not everything needs to go into your vase straight up and down. I'm just going to twist this round so I can see what I'm doing. So by adding in those silhouette leaf shapes, it does start to fill out your vase a little bit so your flowers don't look quite so lonely on their own. And of course you may well have dried flowers and other silk flowers that you can add in. And I think the key for me is to cut your flowers to different lengths. They're not just bunched together. You can stretch them out and see each individual flower on its own. And if you are able to go out for a walk, how about seeing if you can pick up some branches and stems? These will make a great addition, and the more you add in your vase, the more enjoyment you're going to get as it changes from day to day. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Not bad for 6 silk flowers, which I've pulled off my sun hat. I really like the textural detail, the skeletonized outline of a leaf, and then just a few of the branches just really brings everything to life. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I can't wait to see what you come up with your silk flowers.